Part 5. 1. The Princess Shcherbazkaya at first considered it out of the question to have the wedding before Advent, to which there remained but 5 weeks, but couldn't help agreeing with Levin that to put it off until after the fast might involve waiting too long, for Prince Shcherbazky's old aunt was very ill and likely to die soon, and then the family would be in mourning, and the wedding would have to be considerably deferred. Consequently, having decided to divide her daughter's trousseau into 2 parts, a lesser and a larger, the princess eventually consented to having the wedding before Advent. She decided that she would have the smaller part of the trousseau got ready at once, and would send on the larger part later. And she was very cross with Levin, because he could not give her a serious answer to her question, whether he agreed with this or not. This plan would be all the more convenient, because the young couple intended immediately after the wedding to go to the country, where the larger part of the trousseau would not be required. Levin continued in the same condition of delirium as before, imagining that he and his joy were the chief or only purpose of all existence, and that he need not now think or bother about anything, as other people would see to everything for him. He had not even any plans or aims for the future, but left these to others to decide, quite sure that everything would turn out splendidly. His brother Sergei Ivanitch, Oblonsky, and the princess directed his actions. He quite agreed to every proposal. His brother borrowed money for him, the princess advised him to return to the country after the wedding, and Oblonsky suggested going abroad. He agreed to everything. "Do whatever you like, whatever pleases you. I am happy, and my happiness cannot be made or marred by anything you do," he thought. When he told Kitty of Oblonsky's advice that they should go abroad, he was quite surprised at her opposition to it, and to find that she had definite ideas of her own about their future life. She knew that in the country Levin had work of which he was fond. As he saw, she not only did not understand that work, but did not wish to understand it. This, however, did not prevent her considering it very important, and besides, she knew their home would be in the country, and she wanted to go. Not abroad, where they were not going to live, but to where her home would be. This decided expression of her wish surprised Levin, but, as it was quite immaterial to him, he at once begged Oblonsky to go to the house in the country, just as if it were Oblonsky's duty to go, and arrange everything there according to his own good taste. "I say," Oblonsky asked Levin, one day after his return from the country, where he had made all preparations for the young couple, "have you got a certificate to show that you've received communion?" "No. Why?" "They won't marry you without it." "Oh dear," exclaimed Levin. "I think it is 9 years since I went to communion. I haven't thought about it." "You are a good one," remarked Oblonsky, laughing. "And you call me a nihilist. But it won't do, you know. You must confess and receive the sacrament." "When? There are only 4 days left." But Oblonsky arranged that too. Levin began to prepare himself. To him, as an agnostic who yet respected the religious belief of others, it was always very trying to be present at, or to take part in, any religious ceremony. In his present state of mind, softened and sensitive to everything, to be obliged to pretend was not only trying, but appeared impossible. Now, in his state of triumph, at the flowering time of his life, he was to be obliged to lie or blaspheme. He felt unable to do either. But question Oblonsky as he would, as to whether he could not obtain a certificate without going to communion, Oblonsky declared that he must go through with it. "Besides, what does it amount to? 2 days. And the priest is such a nice old man. He will draw that tooth for you so that you will scarcely feel it." Standing in church during the first service he attended, Levin tried to revive the memories of his youth and the strong religious feeling with which at the age of 16 or 17 he had been imbued. But he immediately became convinced that it was out of his power to do so. He then tried to regard it all as a meaningless, empty custom, like making a round of calls, but felt equally unable to do that. In matters of religion, Levin, like most of his contemporaries, had very indefinite views. He could not believe in it, and yet was not firmly convinced that it was all false. Therefore, unable either to believe in the importance of what he was doing, or to look upon it with indifference as an empty form, he, while preparing for confession, felt awkward and ashamed at doing something incomprehensible, and therefore, as an inner voice told him, necessarily false and wrong. During the service he would sometimes listen to the prayers, trying to see in them a meaning which would not clash with his opinions, or, finding that he could not understand and had to disapprove of them, he would try not to listen, but to occupy his mind with observation of what was going on, or with recollections which passed with extraordinary clearness through his brain as he stood idly in the church. He stood through the Mass and Vespers and Evensong, and the next day, having got up earlier than usual, he went to church before breakfast to hear morning prayers and to confess. No one else was in the church except a soldier beggar, 2 old women, and the clergy. The young deacon, the 2 halves of his long back clearly distinguishable through his thin under cassock, met him, and going at once to a small table beside the wall, began reading the prayers. While he was reading, and especially during the frequent and rapid repetitions of "Lord have mercy upon us," which sounded like "Lord have mercy upon us," Levin felt as if his mind were closed and sealed up, and that, if he didn't make it stir now, nothing but confusion would result. Therefore, as he stood behind the deacon, he continued his own train of thought, without listening or trying to comprehend what was being read. How wonderfully expressive her hand is, he thought, recalling how they had sat at the corner table the day before. As was nearly always the case, just then, they had nothing to say to each other, and she had put her hand on the table and kept opening and closing it until she herself began to laugh at its motions. He remembered how he had kissed the hand, and afterwards examined the converging lines on the rosy palm. "Again, Lord of mercy upon us," thought he, crossing himself, bowing, and watching the movements of the bowing deacon's flexible back. Then she took my hand and examined the lines and said, "You have a splendid hand." And he glanced at the deacon's stumpy hand and at his own. "Well, it will soon be over now," he thought. "No, I believe it is all going to begin again." And he listened to the prayer. Yes, it is coming to an end. There he is, bowing to the ground. That always happens just before the end. Having stealthily received a 3-ruble note into his hand under its velvet cuff, the deacon said he would put down Levin's name, and went briskly into the chancel, his new boots clattering over the paved floor of the empty church. A minute later he put his head out and beckoned to Levin. The sealed-up thoughts began stirring in Levin's head, but he hastened to drive them away. It will get settled somehow, he thought, and went to the ambo. On going up the steps and turning to the right, he saw the priest. The latter, an old man with a thin, grizzled beard and kind, weary eyes, stood beside the lectern, turning over the leaves of a missal. Bowing slightly to Levin, he began at once in his stereotyped tone to read the prayers. At the end he bowed to the ground and turned to Levin. "Christ, though unseen, is here present to receive your confession," he said, pointing to a crucifix. "Do you believe in the teachings of the Holy Apostolic Church?" continued the priest, turning his eyes away and folding his hands beneath his stole. "I have doubted, and still doubt, everything," replied Levin in a voice unpleasant to himself, and stopped. The priest paused a few seconds to see whether Levin would say anything more, and then closing his eyes rapidly, with a strong provincial accent, "Doubts are natural to human weakness, but we must pray that our merciful Lord will strengthen us. What are your particular sins?" he continued, without the slightest pause, as if anxious not to waste time. "My chief sin is doubt. I doubt everything, and am in doubt nearly all the time." "Doubt is natural to human weakness," repeated the priest. "What do you doubt in particular?" "Everything. Sometimes I even doubt the existence of God," said Levin involuntarily, and was horrified at the impropriety of his words. But they seemed to have no effect on the priest. "What doubt can there be of the existence of God?" he asked with a faint smile. Levin was silent. "What doubt can you have of the Creator when you see his creation?" continued the priest in his rapid, stereotyped voice. "Who has adorned the vault of heaven with luminaries? Who has decked the earth with beauty? How could it all be without a Creator?" he asked, with an inquiring glance at Levin. Levin felt that it would not be proper to enter into a philosophic discussion with the priest, and therefore merely replied to the direct questions. "I don't know." "You don't know? Then how can you doubt that God created everything?" said the priest in puzzled amazement. "I don't understand it at all," said Levin, blushing, and feeling that his words were silly, and that they could not but be silly. "Pray to God and entreat him. Even the Holy Fathers doubted, and prayed God to strengthen their faith. The devil is very powerful, and we must resist him. Pray to God," he repeated hurriedly. The priest paused a while as if in thought. "I hear you are about to enter into holy matrimony with the daughter of my parishioner and spiritual son, Prince Shcherbatsky," he added with a smile. "A splendid young woman." "Yes," answered Levin with a blush for the priest. Why need he ask me that at confession, he thought. And as if in answer to the thought, the priest said, "You are about to enter into matrimony, and God may give you children, is it not so? Then what sort of education can you give your little ones, if you do not conquer in yourself the temptations of the devil, who is leading you into unbelief?" he asked in a mild rebuke. "If you love your offspring, then you, as a kind father, will desire not only riches, luxury, and honors for your child, but will desire his salvation, his spiritual advancement by the light of truth. Is that not so? And when your innocent little one asks, 'Papa, who has created everything that pleases me in this world, earth, water, sun, flowers, grass?' what will you say? Will you really say to him, 'I don't know'? You cannot help knowing, since God in his great mercy has revealed it to you. Or your child may ask, 'What awaits me beyond the tomb?' What will you tell him if you yourself know nothing? How will you answer him? Will you leave him to the temptations of the world and the devil? That is wrong." The priest ceased, and, with his head on one side, regarded Levin with mild, kindly eyes. This time, Levin did not reply, not because he did not wish to enter upon a discussion with the priest, but because no one had ever yet put such questions to him, and also because, before his little one could begin asking such questions, there would be plenty of time to consider what the answers should be. "You are entering upon a time of life," the priest went on, "when you must choose your path and keep to it. So pray that God in his goodness may help you and have mercy on you," he concluded. "May the Lord our God Jesus Christ, in the goodness and bounty of his love for mankind, pardon thee." And having pronounced the absolution, the priest blessed him and let him go. When he got home that day, Levin felt relieved at having done with an unpleasant episode in such a way that they had not been obliged to tell lies. Besides, he was left with a vague feeling that what the nice, kind old man had said to him was not as stupid as it had seemed at first, and that there was something in it that ought to be elucidated. Of course, not now, thought he, but later on. He felt more than ever before that there was a kind of vagueness in his soul, a want of clearness, and that with regard to religion, he was in the same position that he saw so distinctly and disliked in others, and for which he found fault with his friend Sviatchky. He spent that evening with his betrothed at the Oblonskys', and was in particularly high spirits. Explaining to Oblonsky the state of elation he was in, he said he felt as pleased as a dog that was being taught to jump through a hoop, and which, having accomplished what was demanded of it, barks and wags its tail and jumps for joy upon the tables and window sills. 2. On his wedding day, Levin, according to custom, the princess and Dolly insisted on his strictly conforming to custom, did not see his bride, and dined at his hotel with 3 bachelors who happened to drop in. Sergei Ivanitch, Katavazov, an old fellow student at the university, and now a professor of natural science, whom Levin had chanced to meet in the street and induced to come, and Chirikov, his best man, a Moscow magistrate and a bear-hunting comrade of Levin's. The dinner was a very merry one. Sergei Ivanitch was in the best of spirits and was tickled by Katavazov's originality. Katavazov, feeling that his originality was observed and appreciated, showed it off. Chirikov gaily and good-naturedly backed up everyone else. "There now," said Katavazov with a drawl, a habit he had fallen into when lecturing. "What a talented fellow our friend Konstantin Dmitrich used to be. I am speaking of one who is not with us, because he is no more. In those days he loved science. When he left the university, he had human interests. But now half his talents are bent on self-deception, and the other half toward justification of that deception. I have never come across a more decided foe of marriage than yourself," remarked Sergei Ivanitch. "No, I am no foe of marriage, but I believe in division of labour. Persons who can do nothing else must make men, and the others must help them to culture and happiness. That is how I look at it. There are hosts of aspirants who aim at mixing those two professions, but I am not one of them." "How delighted I shall be when I hear of your falling in love," said Levin. "Pray invite me to your wedding." "I am in love already." "Yes, with a mollusk. Do you know," said Levin, turning to his brother, "Katavazov is writing a work on nutriment and—" "Ah, don't confuse matters. What does it matter what I write about? The fact is, I really do love mollusks." "But they would not prevent you loving a wife." "They would not, but the wife would." "Why?" "Oh, you'll soon find out. Now you like farming, sport. Well, you just wait and see." "You know, Arkhip came today to say that in Prudno there are lots of elk and 2 bears," said Chirikov. "Well, you have to get 'em without me." "There you are," said Sergei Ivanitch. "Goodbye to bear hunting in future. Your wife won't allow it." Levin smiled. The idea that his wife would not allow it seemed so agreeable that he was prepared to forego the pleasure of ever setting eyes on a bear again. "All the same, it's a pity that those 2 bears will be killed without you. Do you remember that time in Hapilovka? What fine sport we had," said Chirikov. Levin did not wish to deprive him of the illusion that somewhere there could be something good without her. Therefore he said nothing. "This custom of taking leave of celibacy is not without its reason," said Sergei Ivanitch. "However happy you may be, you can't help regretting your freedom." "Now confess that you feel like the bridegroom in Gogol's play who jumped out of the window," teased Chirikov. "Of course he feels so, but won't own up," said Katavazov, and burst out laughing. "Well, the window is open. Let us be off to Tver." "One is a she-bear. We can go straight for the lair." "Yes, let's catch the 5 o'clock train, and leave them to do as they please here," said Chirikov, smiling. "I am ready to swear I can't find in my soul a trace of regret for my freedom," said Levin, with a smile. "Ah, but your soul is in such chaos at the present moment that you are unable to find anything there. Wait till you've settled down a bit, then you'll find it," said Katavazov. "No, I should even now have some consciousness that despite my feelings," he did not wish in Katavazov's presence to use the word love, "and my happiness, I was yet sorry to lose my freedom. But quite on the contrary, it is precisely of this loss of freedom that I am glad." "Very bad, a hopeless case," said Katavazov. "Well, let us drink to his recovery, or let us wish that at least 100th part of his dream come true. Even that will be such joy as was never seen on earth." Soon after dinner, the visitors left to get ready for the wedding. When he was alone, Levin, thinking over the remarks of the 3 bachelors, once more asked himself whether there was in his soul any of that regret for his freedom that they had been speaking about. The question made him smile. Freedom? What is the good of freedom? Happiness consists only in loving and desiring, in wishing her wishes and in thinking her thoughts, which means having no freedom whatever. That is happiness. "But do I know her thoughts, wishes, or feelings?" a voice suddenly whispered. The smile faded from his face and he pondered, and all at once a strange sensation came over him. He was possessed by fear and doubt of everything. Supposing she does not love me? Supposing she's only marrying me just to get married? Supposing she does not herself know what she's doing? He asked himself. She might bethink herself, and only when she is already married find out that she does not and never could love me. And strange and most evil thoughts about her came into his mind. He became jealous of Vronsky, just as he had been the year before, as if it had been but yesterday that he saw her with him. He suspected that she had not told him the whole truth. Suddenly he jumped up. "No, this won't do," he said to himself despairingly. "I will go to her and tell her for the last time that we are now free, and that perhaps we had better keep so. Anything would be better than continual shame, misery, infidelity." With his heart full of despair and bitterness toward everyone, toward himself and her, he left the hotel and went to her. He found her in one of the back rooms. She was sitting on a trunk making some arrangements with one of the maids, sorting a pile of differently colored dresses that hung over the backs of chairs or lay on the floor. "Ah!" she cried when she saw him, and her face lit up with joy. "Why have you— Well, This is a surprise, and I'm sorting my old dresses to give them away." "Ah, that is very nice," he said gloomily, with a glance at the maid. "You may go, Dunyasha. I will call you," said Kitty. "What is the matter with you?" she asked as soon as the maid was gone. She had noticed his strange expression, at once excited and gloomy, and was seized with alarm. "Kitty, I am in torture. I cannot bear it alone," he cried in a despairing tone, standing before her and looking imploringly into her eyes. Already in her loving, truthful face he could read that what he was going to tell her would lead to nothing. Yet he felt that he still wanted to hear her disavowal. "I have come to say that there is still time. All this business can still be put a stop to." "What? I don't understand in the least. What is the matter with you?" "What I have said 1,000 times I cannot help thinking. That I am not worthy of you. It cannot be that you have agreed to marry me. Think it over. You have made a mistake. Think it well over. You cannot love me. You better tell me," he went on, without looking at her. "I shall be unhappy, of course. Let them all say what they like. Anything is better than the misfortune. Anyhow, it will be better now, while there is still time." "I don't understand," she said, thoroughly frightened. "Do you mean you refuse? Why stop?" "Yes, if you don't love me." "Are you mad?" she exclaimed, flushing with vexation. But his face was so piteous that she suppressed her vexation, and throwing the dresses on a chair, sat down closer to him. "What are you thinking about? Tell me everything." "I think you cannot love me. What could you love me for?" "Oh God, what can I do?" she cried, and began to weep. "Oh, what have I done?" he exclaimed, and kneeling before her, he began kissing her hands. When the princess came in 5 minutes later, she found them quite reconciled. Kitty had not only assured him that she loved him, but had even given him, in answer to his question, the reasons why. She told him she loved him because she completely understood him, because she knew that it was necessary for him to love, and that all that he loved was good. This seemed quite clear to him. When the princess entered, they were sitting side by side on the trunk, sorting the dresses and disputing because Kitty wanted to give Dunyasha the brown dress she had worn when Levin proposed to her, while he insisted that that dress should not be given to anyone, and that she should give Dunyasha a blue one instead. "How is it you don't understand? She is dark and it won't suit her. I have considered it all." When the princess heard why he had come, she grew angry half in fun and half in earnest, and told him to go home and dress and not to delay Kitty, whose hair had to be done by the hairdresser, due to arrive immediately. "She has scarcely eaten anything all these days and has grown quite plain, and here you come and upset her with your nonsense," said she. Be off, my dear." Guilty and ashamed, but comforted, Levin returned to his hotel. His brother, Dolly, and Oblonsky, all in evening dress, were waiting to bless him with the icon. Dolly had to return home to fetch her son, who, his hair oiled and curled, was to drive in the bride's carriage and hold an icon. Then a carriage had to be sent to fetch the groomsmen, and another was to take Sergei Ivanitch and return again. Altogether, there were many complicated arrangements to consider. One thing was certain. There was no time to be lost, for it was already 6:30. The blessing was not a success. Oblonsky, standing in a comically solemn attitude beside his wife, took the icon and told Levin to bow to the ground. Then he blessed him, smiling a kindly amused smile, and kissed him 3 times. Dolly did the same. Then she hurried away and again became confused about the arrangements for the carriages. "Then this is what we must do. You go and fetch him in our carriage, and Sergei Ivanitch, if he will be so kind, will go first and will send the carriage back." "Of course, I shall be very pleased." "And we will follow immediately with him." "Have your trunks been sent off?" inquired Oblonsky. "Yes, they have," replied Levin, and told Kuzma to get his things out that he might dress.